Welcome to match point number 9 at Tennis Bets Podcast. I'm one of two co-hosts here, David E.J. Berger. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts. You can find our show handle at MP9 Tennis on X and all the socials. If you're a first-time listener, chances are how you found us. If you're a returning listener, a returning champion, welcome back. I'm based in California. I'm tossing it to my main man in Canada, Mr. John Reed. You can find him at Jared Tweets Tennis. He has been in content for his own brand, Tidbits Tennis, which you can find at Tidbits Tennis. John, I just experienced an entire weekend sober, no alcohol for me, and that's the first time I've done that in some time. And I wish I could say I'm bright and cheery, raring to go. I'm shading towards that, but I am here and ready to talk about these two tournaments this week. Welcome in.
Yeah, good to go. I always love NFL Sundays. I just had a nice. I only had one bet on the NFL yesterday. I'm not a sharp NFL bettor by any means. I do bet early, and I have beaten the line a decent amount this year. So maybe I'm better than I think I am. But I won it. There's nothing better than an NFL Sunday where your team's on bye. You don't have that many bets. You just get to watch all the games, whether it be through red zone or multi-screening. Several 1 o'clock games. As a fan, I love it. It's the best. So I'm in a good mood, ready to go. We got a couple 500s on deck. I think I'm looking at Vegas again in January for the Australian Open. I think I'll do second week this time instead of first, just because I want to be at home for the volume of the first week. I thought Vegas would have more offerings, but as you kind of told me, and when we were hanging out, we actually had to walk down to a Will Hill kiosk to get spreads and totals. I'm not too fond of that, like Circa, the Westgate, all those places. You had to go. They only had money lines. They're not like our friends over at SX Bet that have markets out the wazoo for us. So yeah, I'm thinking about going back second week of the Australian Open or the week before the Australian Open, one or the other.
Speaking of money line and the NFL and SX Bet, John, yesterday I pop on, obviously as the sharpest bidder in the world. I'm looking at lines right before close, but I did get the Bears under minus 200 on the money line on SX Bet versus the Saints, which I found to be pretty cheap, and paired that up with the Patriots for a nice little two-leg money line parlay that no sweat cash for me. Thank you, SX Bet. I believe I ended up getting plus 107 on that. So plus money for two obvious favorites. I thought we should have paid juice for that. So not just with tennis, get on there for football with SX Bet. Great product. All right, John, we have two tournaments to talk about this week. But first, what did we win? What did we learn from last week? Opening rounds of Almaty, Brussels, and Stockholm wins. Lorenzo Sonego, easy dub. Thank you. Marton Fucsovics over De Jong. Cash that for John. Bodek van de Zandschulp. How about the over and the moneyline dog win over João Fonseca, who continues to slump? A lot of people are saying, why isn't Leonard Tien getting the hype of Fonseca? Done a lot more this year. I can't say I disagree at this point. Some North American fans saying that, John.
Well, that's the power of IMG, right? I've always said Muratagu and IMG are great for young tennis players because they build them into a brand. And I just don't. I think Teen might actually see IMG as well. He just doesn't have the same backing, and he doesn't have the flashiness. I'm sorry, tennis is built around flashiness. How often do I say that, right? How often do I tear down the men's game? Not tear down, but not knock the men's game for having so few players who do anything but hit the ball hard. Hitting the ball hard is what brings fans in, or what makes fans go ooh and ah, not the great slice followed by an incredibly deep, down the line top spin forehand that is incredibly effective because you've been pulled out of position and you can't do anything against that game style, which Teen kind of employs. It's not flashy though. It doesn't make fans go ooh and ah in the stands or on TV. And ultimately that's what it is. Right now, Teen is the better player. And 5 years from now, we won't be saying that. I'm positive of it. Once Fonseca develops any kind of point construction and return game and stops just bashing the ball as hard as he can. But for now, he is the better player. But the ceiling's lower, and tennis fans love potential.
Adam Walton comes in with a nice dub over Schoolkate. Berrettini covers against Zeppieri. We have Topo and Vukic going over. Talked a little Topo money line. So that's a win and a loss. Speaking of another win and a loss, Rusevori easy over against Pechi Pericard. Pericard overs cashed the entire week. Did lose on the money line there. Pivots to the true losses. We had Bukov Jair against Chilich. That goes down. And Zizou Bergslearns loses to his countryman Collion, who had a great week, which sucks to lose in the moment, but we are Collion guys, so that was pretty cool. And Zhukayev, the dog, did not bark against Mickelson. So a pretty good one, John, overall.
Yeah, some of the dog over stuff. I overall last week had a decent week, which is nice. I think I've referred at least a few times on some of the bonus supporters pods that people can sign up for if they want to join us throughout the week at these tournaments. Had a terrible start to October, one of my worst days ever. So it took me a while to dig out of it, but last week helped finish that job off and put me into the black for October. So I'm not sitting here going to say I'm crushing the month of October, but last week was a nice one. It helped me out a little bit, and a lot of those dog over combos surprisingly didn't actually come in all the way around, but a lot of those overs, those plus 1.5 sets, first set overs, really helped. Kind of, this is why you diversify even within a single match. This is why you want to diversify your portfolio back in these underdogs, right? Because you can still make a ton of money. You hear people talk about, people like the trends and they like the underdogs don't win a lot at these tournaments, but that's again the follow up question to that is, well, how often do underdogs keep things close? Because you can back them on the plus games, you can back them on the plus sets, you can back them on the over games. You can back them in 4 or 5 different ways. And if you get underdogs keeping matches close, but ultimately losing, you can still make a lot of money in those matches. And you then, of course, you can then filter down to, well, I don't want to oppose sinners, so I don't really care if 30% of underdogs win at this tournament. You can just take out all of the sinner matches that I'm probably not going to bet money line against him on. And all of a sudden, we're really starting to understand that context matters as always, and that you can still profit at tournaments where underdogs may not win as outright as often, right? You don't need them to. That's the fun part about betting this sport, is we have so many different ways to make money.
Agreed. A lot of great markets in this sport. Let's talk about some this week as we have 2 indoor sites. The first of which we will discuss is ATP Vienna. Founded in 1974, this has been a 250 and now a 500 since 2015. Last year's champ was Jack Draper, beating Hernachanov 6-4, 7-5. Yannick Sinner beat Daniil Medvedev in 3 sets the year before that. Daniil Medvedev beat Denis Shapovalov in 2022. A good fight from Shapo that went 3 sets, though. Alex Zverev won in 2021. There hasn't been a repeat champ since Andy Murray in 2016, so a lot of turnover. Taking the crown. This is an interesting one, I think, for conditions talk, because obviously both sites are going to be relatively fast this week. And Basel, on paper, John, is the fastest courts according to Tennis Abstract and according to our boy Piranha. But I want to say, John, a lot of this data I feel is skewed by the fact that Basel was won last year by Gio Pericard, who took on Ben Shelton in the final. And I mean, when you get multiple matches of Breaker Pericard, it's going to skew the data quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, last week though, you'd think you'd be able to say that, but you also had like Baez and Martinez throw in 2 matches of garbage serving performances to kind of balance out a couple of those bigger server matches. And my goodness, did it play quick in Brussels? But we knew this. We know the Belgium tournament tends to play fast. I kind of like that. It's like an old school mentality of, nah, this is an indoor hardcore. We're not slowing it down or gritting it up. So kudos to them. We're going to find this week, it's odd because I think from what I've watched in prior years, Vienna tends to end up playing. I don't know how to describe it. It's not a lower bounce. It's not like the typical quick slick court, but it's also not slow. It's not even like medium slow. It still plays relatively quick with the high bounce. 2 things that don't typically go together, right? There's obvious exceptions, this tournament being one of them, but they're not typically things you'd associate with each other. The higher bounce and the or bouncier conditions and typically quicker ones. So keep that in mind as you handicap. I already kind of leveled myself into backing a losing bet this week. in Tabilo because I thought, quicker courts plus higher bounce, it's perfect for him. And Bublik's kind of been clouding around a bit. I got my derriere handed to me on that one. So don't overthink it either, and don't kind of overweight your service kinds of like how much you think it impacts any individual given matchup matters. Uh, kind of the fact that talent is gonna matter as well, and I kind of made that mistake. Right, we all make mistakes, and that was one of them for me. So yes, it's worth keeping in mind as one of your factors, but as always, never get too into the weeds on one specific factor. I got singularly focused, which I kind of knock a lot of the market for a lot of the time, and I made the same mistake and paid for it. So keep that in mind as well.
According to our boy Piranha Tennis at Piranha Tennis and his data, Vienna's percentages, the whole percentage is about 1% off tour average for indoors. Tiebreak the same. And I think the biggest difference is the unders. Last year, and this is data from last year, by the way, sorry. Last year, the three sets, 26.83% three set matches. The average is 33.5. So a lot of two set matches here in Vienna. If you're chasing overs, this was last year as well. So 1 year sample size. You don't want to overweight it because you got to consider who was in the draw last year. But that is the biggest difference in terms of tour average for indoors here in Austria. All right, let's dip into the draw talk, John. Yannick Sinner is here, which means he's probably going to win. Let's just be real. He's the top seed. On the bottom half is Alex Zverev, who's the 2 seed. We have Alex de Minaur, who's currently playing right now in a bit of a dogfight. In his opening round match, Musetti is the 4 seed, Hernachanov the 5 seed, Daniil Medvedev the 6 seed, Andrei Rublev the 7 seed, Alex Bublik, who's been hot, and I won't say he's been cold, but has definitely not shown out for his last couple appearances. But that's okay. He's had a great year. He's the 8 seed. And look, if there's anyone that you want to back, I think, John, in the draw to take down Sinner, I do believe it's Alex Bublik, and he is in his half. That said, is there a big discussion here with Yannick Sinner in the draw? I feel like when you have these guys in the draw now, it's tough.
Yeah, and you don't know how much he's going to want this. On one hand, he came from Saudi Arabia last week where he just won, and they played right into the weekend as well. So it's not like it wrapped up Friday and he had all the time in the world to get to Europe. On the flip side, this is a quasi home tournament for him. Keep in mind, like, he's a German speaker. He's got that kind of like red hair that you don't often associate with Italians. He's from up near the border, if I recall, with Austria. So he might even regard this as a semi home tournament. I'm sure the crowd will be with him for that reason and the fact that he's Yannick freaking Sinner. So yeah, I mean, I have no idea what to do with that. Bublik could absolutely give him problems again. He's always kind of going to be in that conversation anywhere that's on grass or on an indoor hard court with his serve, with his kind of just raw ability. And I think it's pretty obvious that he enjoys playing that kind of spoiler role. But where's his motive? Like, you just don't know the motivation for anyone in this draw, really. I don't think you ever have to question de Minaur in that regard. So if you think Sinner withdraws after winning 2 matches, or if you think, we're not going to see the cramp ups because we're not in Shanghai in brutal conditions, but if there's any reason to doubt him or doubt him wanting to play a full week, which again, I don't know what that would be, but who knows, then maybe de Minaur would be a look. You got semi-quick conditions. You've got a manageable path for him in his second quarter anyway. Like, Berrettini has not been very good. He's not been fit. He has not shown the ability to hold up across more than 2 matches since July, maybe even longer than that. And then Rublev has been downright terrible, like legitimately not even a top 25 caliber player in recent times. He was overplaying the UTS as well somewhere else, I think in Hong Kong, so in Asia. So he has maybe a travel spot. I don't know how long he was there for. I'm concerned about Medvedev coming from Almaty. I know this is a bigger level event, but how much is he going to be pressing to win back-to-back weeks with a potential travel spot in there? We know Zverev has major issues physically right now, and he's talking about not being there mentally. Kachanov's been god-awful. Griekspoor's been god-awful. Nakashima's been awful. Darderi's been awful. Tsitsipas has been awful slash hurt. Musetti is not built for quicker conditions. I maintained that. I think a lot of people threw his grass season from whenever 23 or 24 in my face, and I mean it's pretty obvious that he said last week in an on-court interview he's not built for the fast conditions. I mean, what on earth do you make of this draw? Like, it's just the easiest pass I've ever seen. I don't bet outrights anyway, DB. You throw in not uncertainty around one player that creates value elsewhere. You throw in uncertainty around every major player in this draw. Not for the same reason, but they all have their own kind of issues with how much you can rely on them in a betting capacity for an entire week. And I have zero interest in betting this tournament from an outright perspective, of course.
I don't disagree. One name I want to pick out, and he's been pretty bad as well, but he has also been off the tour and coming back, and there's another week back, and that's Matteo Berrettini. If he can get a redlining week on serve, I think we could see something from him. We'll talk about his market versus Alexei Popyrin coming up, I'm sure, but I do think he could be a sneaky dark horse this week. All right, let's move to match play, John. Quasi interesting one. Camilo Ugo Karabahi. By the way, we paint and knock Tomas Mahach as the retirement king quite a bit, mainly me. But you know who's the retirement prince is Camilo Ugo Karabahi, who has 5 retirements since July. He's taking on Filip Masolic. 3.5 game. It looks like it's a 3.5 game spread. Minus 189 for Masolic on the money line on SXBet, where we like to play plus 172 for the Argentinian, 22.5 total. It's a plus money over, plus 112 for over 22.5 right now on SXBet. John, this is one that I feel like Misolic seems like a really solid play-ish, but I felt like he had some real problems with the service game last week indoors. You think that the serve would hold up, but it was not. And man, I think this could be a sneaky over, even though I talked before about a lot of unders coming in. I feel like both guys are pretty live to win a set here.
I tend to agree, and I'd lean more towards the Ugo Carabelli side, just because I want to struggle with how to put this. Let me just say it this way: Misolic, I thought he had improved on hard courts more than he has really. From what I've seen in the last few matches, I thought his first set was really strong against Henry Bernet before he kind of regressed to looking like a clay quarter indoors, and he just has not been that strong. And I know that Ugo Carabelli in his own right is by no means a hard quarter, but the problem is you can't punish one guy for not being a great hard quarter in a match between two guys who prefer clay courts. You have to punish them both for it. And then you talk about the fact that, like, at least Ugo Carabelli is a fringe tour level player on his preferred surface, and Misolic is still working. He'd be like a 250, an established tour level player, a lower rated one, but still a tour level player nonetheless. Whereas Misolic is still working to get to that level. I don't get why there's such a discrepancy. Is it because Ugo Carabelli retired in Stockholm? Perhaps, but as you've talked about, he's kind of the retirement prince. He does it a lot. And we've had issues with him in the past, retiring like 2-5 down, 2 points away from losing in a match before. Like he has like legitimately poor etiquette retirements in his locker as well, which I can't stand. But that also just means that perhaps if you like Ugo Carabelli, you want to find a book that voids all retirements, not just those that happen in the first set. And that's what I've done. I've gone offshore and I've played Ugo Carabelli small at a place where I'm going to not be overly concerned. But they were the best price at the time anyway, which I was surprised about. A guy who retires last batch, who retires often. Usually those books, there's very few of them, but those books will charge you kind of a premium, and they'll be more expensive to back those players in their next match than the more mainstream books that grade after the first set. But actually got a pretty decent price. So I'll go small, but it's hard to really suggest it for the pod or for the win and learn because there's just not that many books out there that do it. And it is a really kind of niche angle I'd want to take. I think there is a little bit of equity in backing him at this price, but only at certain books. And so I think it's tough to really put on a record or put forward as a suggestion for our win and we'll learn in the next episode kind of deal.
I like the over 22 and a half at plus money. I like the over 2.5 sets. I think this match could be a real shit show at plus money. And I'm willing to take a shot at these guys going the distance. All right, John, I'm going to talk about the unthinkable here. I'm thinking about backing Stefano Tsitsipas. He is now out to plus 211 on SXBet on the money line versus Lorenzo Musetti minus 229. It's a 3-game spread, 22 and a half total. Tsitsipas, the glory days of fading him at uh, good prices seem to be over. The market has finally adjusted to how bad he has been. That said, John, listen, he's been a profitable fade, but even in those losses, it was pretty close. Musetti, not exactly a hardcore world beater, can get broken. I don't know, man. At over 2 to 1 for my money, I do know I'm going to get a reasonable service game performance from Tsitsipas. I think the health is and the fitness is a question. Obviously, the rumors of back surgery, yada yada. He played the Six King Slam. He was tough to read what much from that match because he was beat down by center, and everybody gets beat down by center. So I don't know, man. I feel like now I'm getting tempted at a growing market. It was like plus 207. It's up 4 cents from when I hit record.
I mean, I don't think I'm backing Musetti because perhaps the second set tank if he gets down a set is there for Tsitsipas, and you know what? It's only a -3. It's not even like a 3.5 or 4. So maybe there is something to this. I think Musetti's got the better one hander. I passed on this match. I can't do anything with it. I get it. I think Tsitsipas at plus 200, even on a court he hates when he's got physical concerns, is still going to be tempting just because he's playing one of the more overvalued guys in tennis. And so I kind of understand the sentiment. But for me, this ends up coming down to being one of those spots where I think there's going to be a better spot to fade Musetti moving forward. And so I'll just hold out. I look at the kind of spreads on these secondary kind of numbers as well. The spread at 3, -106, -101, and then the total is -102 and -105. So SXBet offering some very competitive prices right now. That's what the peer-to-peer can do for you. People clearly on both sides of this match, right? You've got some people who think it's gone too far on Tsitsipas that are willing to give you a decent price on Musetti -3. And equally, you've got some people who think Tsitsipas is done. Probably see one potential 6-3 or 6-2 set coming along. And that means that they're going to offer you a decent number on the +3. So I get it. I get both sides of that argument. If I'm being totally honest, I get the handicap on both sides. And that's why I've passed. Plus, I can't think of any easier match for someone from a less sharp mindset point of view. Like for me, I just can't stand either of these guys really on a hard court. And so it's nice. I've got like the mentality equity or the non-tilt equity in just passing, right? It's not a sharp observation. You bet numbers, not players. But in this spot, when I'm already leaning towards a pass, that kind of gives me the nudge I need to stay the hell away.
All right. Well, if we hit plus 225, I will be playing a donk over combo with Stefano Tsitsipas because I just want to see. I just I'm not sure he's that bad. I mean, I know he's bad. Trust me. Anyone that's listening to this podcast, we pretty much fade him all the time. But as we bet numbers, not players, I think that he's not that bad. All right. Francisco Cerundolo, speaking of players that might be that bad. He's taking on Alex Mickelson. Man, Dolo, what a start to this season and fell off a cliff. What is going on with this guy? Has not shown any solid form for months. Mickelson, the tricky baseliner American who had a pretty good week in Almaty last week, -111. Dolo out to -113. It's basically a pick 'em match. 22 and a half total. Jeez. I feel like Mickelson should probably be a slight favorite at this point. I don't know, man. Here's the thing: Dolo's ceiling with his forehand, he could obviously hit his way through Mickelson in straight sets, but we haven't really seen that guy in a long time. And Mickelson's baseline game, making this guy play a lot of balls, he's just going to hit his way out of the match.
Yeah, so there's a few things that go into this. And I actually think I'm going to be able to be succinct with this one for once in my life. One, yes, Sinandolo has the forehand kind of advantage in terms of pace generation and offensive capability, but he's also far more error prone off both sides than Mickelson. He's can be rushed under pressure into said errors. He's playing a guy who is pretty solid from the baseline, that has the game and composure to kind of really make sure that those error counts are lopsided and in his favor. And that, if Citadel is going to hit 35 unforced errors, if his opponent's going to hit 35, not as detrimental. If his opponent's only going to hit 10 or 15, that becomes tougher to overcome. We talk about the Citadel forehand advantage. I mean, likewise on the other side for Mickelson, who's got a very strong backhand in my mind. The serve plays up, so I think Mickelson in quicker conditions where that first serve plays has been a bit better. Form favors Mickelson as well. I mean, he's not playing very well, but at least he has one tournament where he's looked good. And finally, this is something that I think is pretty important, is I have found that Citadel has been overvalued quite a bit in recent times. And so I wanted to verify that sentiment. His last 3 tournaments, he's lost as a favorite, which tells me, again, the market has yet to catch up on the fact that he is slumping. He is maybe that the last 52-week data is looking decent. Maybe the ranking looks okay. Maybe the ELOs look okay because those are based on a kind of 1 year roll, a 52-week rolling average as well. But we have to understand that a lot of the data that is input into those numbers has come from Indian Wells on hard court, has come from Miami, has come from the Australian Open. And recently he's not been very good. So how much weight can you really give, or how much credit can you really give for stats amassed 7 months ago? It's really tough for me to give him that much credit. I'd prefer to look at the last 3 months, which is still a large enough sample, or it's been a long enough time frame that he's been pretty poor. And the market continues to make him a favorite against guys that he just doesn't deserve to be. I don't even think he should have been as big of a favorite as he was against Bears. I don't think that against the current version of Lerner Teen, even though I'm not the biggest teen guy, I don't think he should have been a clear favorite in that matchup. And we saw him lose to Leandro Reed at the US Open. Those are his last 3 losses on tour. And it hasn't been good enough. So, even the wins, who's he beaten on tour? Manarino in 2 tiebreaks. Arnaldi in 5 sets on a hard court, and then Echeverry on a hard court and Munar on a hard court. And he needed a 6-4 third set in Toronto, where, by the way, I bet on him on that day, and he did not deserve to win that match. I thought he was better for the first 60% of the first set. And from there on out, he was pretty much outplayed. And I think the breakpoint conversions went my way on that day. And I can admit when I'm a little bit lucky in terms of, variance working in my favor and getting a bet I shouldn't have. So I just haven't seen anything from Citadel that indicates he should be a pick-em with Mickelson right now. So yeah, Mickelson's a bet for me.
Since beating Pedro Martinez on May 18th, Dolo is 8-11.
Yep, 20 is not the biggest sample, or 19 is not the biggest sample. We're not including Laver Cup and Davis Cup in there, I hope.
Oh, I did. Sorry. Yes, I did.
Okay, so let's go. You said 8-11. We removed 2 wins. He's 6-10. If we remove the Alcaraz loss and the Van de Zandschulp and Runa wins, so if we 6-10, it's not great. And the thing is, we run into this issue where the sample size isn't the biggest because he's losing so much he can't really get to play that many matches. We're talking about how many months though? 3 months, 4 months, 3.5, somewhere in there. I mean, that's a decent sample size time-wise. And the fact that he doesn't have a large enough sample size match-wise is because he's been so poor, right? It's like, if you want to throw me that's not a big enough sample argument, well, that's precisely because we haven't been able to get a big enough sample because he's been so trash. So, I mean, it's hard for me to understand why he would be a pick here, other than perhaps maybe model-driven pricing from bettors who are more quantitatively driven, that are still using last 52-week data because of, they want a larger sample, but not really making enough adjustments for recent form. And by recent, I don't mean like last 2 weeks. I mean like last 3 months. I think you do have to account for that. I just don't think it's priced in enough. And so I'm going to go ahead and bet Mickelson.
Okay, is there anything to be timely here? Anything you have in pocket that you want to talk about next?
Not really. It's back to plus 260. I don't mind Fernley for a very small stake, and this is going to be money line only. I think Fernley was smacked by Zverev. Was it the U.S. Open, or they played once this summer? I think, and Zverev handled him easily. But I'm just worried about Zverev physically, honestly. And Fernley's finding this time of year, the quicker courts that serve is going to play. That forehand is very nice. Not really rounding a corner form wise. I don't want to go too far and say that, but I mean, he's got a quality game. He's a hard court natural. He likes quicker conditions, which both Vienna and Basel are going to offer, and he's over plus 250 against a guy who said he's not mentally nor physically there right now. It's just too much for me to pass on. So I've taken a tiny bit of Fernley. We're talking less than a half unit, by the way, is my staking on this. So please don't run out and be like, John like said I'm going to tail and then go for a full unit. And that, of course, I don't think Zverev retires all that much, but I would only take it out of retirement book anyway. Someone that pays after the first set or first ball, even. I think there's a couple books out there that do that. In case of a retirement, again, it's doesn't add much to your equity to your position, but every little bit you can squeeze out of it counts. And so I think there is a tiny bit of added value if you place it at the right book
They've
or
played three.
exchange. I guess XBet.
They've played 3 times this year. The Australian Open, Miami, and the U.S. Open. Friendly is yet to win a set, but it is a physicality fade. So there you go. Okay, John. What about we talked about? I think on our supporter show about not wanting to back Cobley as a big favorite. Now he is plus 160 as the dog against Tomas Machac, who is minus 173, 2.5 game spread, 22.5 total. I'm considering Flavio here. Tomas, obviously, his rise a couple years ago when he became a main tour player was thanks to his end of year run on the indoor scene, challenger slash main tour. So I think he has an edge in this matchup. It's really just about what are we going to get from Machac, and Cobley is a guy who I think you can paint with the honest performance brush. I know that I will get a solid effort from him as a quality player. Plus 160 is pretty tempting to me here.
Mahacha pass for me. I don't think Cobley's got enough to keep him at bay on serve, and I think as flattened and kind of slappy as Mahac hits, he doesn't. I don't think he commits nearly as many really bad errors as Cobley does. And again, the Shanghai retirements, the conditions there were so brutal. I do have them in the back of my mind, but I'm not going to give a ton of credence to them. Plus, a minus 2.5 here is a nice number. It's not too. It doesn't require more than kind of a break of serve margin of victory in a lot of cases. Let me put it that way. And I also, again, if I'm betting the minus games, any retirement, which Machac is very prone to do when he's not feeling it or feeling at his best, I get my void. So there's certainly some equity coming, into my position in that regard as well. So I'm probably going to go Machac, but it's definitely Machac or pass on my front. We can both sides it though.
Yeah, we haven't really seen outside of beating down Bellucci, which Bellucci's getting beat down by everybody. But he hasn't really had a quality win in some time. Even his U.S. Open run was Nardi, Fonseca, okay, but Fonseca obviously slumping. Blanchet loses in straight sets to Machac. Wimbledon, he beat Jamir Zhumer, lost in 5 to August Holmgren.
Our boy,
Marichon,
August Holmgren.
our boy. Marichon, De Jong. It has not been great for Machac. So I'll take a shot on a dog in the spot. Conditions, obviously, maybe we see a more lively Machac, but yeah, The form just hasn't been there for me to have the Italian at this pricing. Okay, John, you backed your boy Nikolai Budkov Jair. How do you say this guy's name? Jair?
Yeah, it's either that or Kier. I don't know.
Kier.
I don't know the KJ A and E attached together. That one I'm not familiar with. So maybe that he's winning some challengers. Maybe the ATP site has it up now. I don't
Well,
know.
I watched a YouTube clip and I still can't hang on to it in my mind. They
We'll call him
pronounced it
NBK.
NBK. Ooh, NBK. Dude, this guy's got to be a guy. NB natural born killer, dude. I mean, come on, buddy.
I
You
like
got
it.
to be somebody, man. He's taking on Tomas Martin Etcheverry, who had a decentish week last week. Picked up a couple wins. Etch is minus 131 as the favorite, plus 124 for the Norwegian, 22 and a half total. You were pretty hot on MBK against Chilich. Now he is a better price against a guy who's not the greatest hard quarter, although, as I mentioned last time, Etcheverry, not necessarily underrated on hard indoor hard courts, but has found some success in the past.
I didn't do anything with this one. I don't have much on it. I'd like to see how he holds up against another guy that's kind of a tour level player, but on these courts isn't exactly a world beater by any stretch. And could he make a case he's a fringe hard quarter in if you wanted to, which I think this age Marin Cilic at this age Marin Cilic is as well. Be pretty disappointing if he goes 0-2 in these matches. So it's a watch and take notes kind of match for me.
All right, last one I'll discuss is one I mentioned in the draw preview. Matteo Berrettini is my dark horse. However, he is minus 150 on the money line versus Alexei Poprin, and I can't justifiably play that against a guy in Poprin who whose game should be okay in these conditions. I don't know, man. I think that's maybe find some value with Berrettini down the line type of thing. If anything, I feel like Poprin's a bit undervalued, quite frankly.
Yeah, tons of question marks for both of those guys. So easy pass for me.
Yes. Okay, let's go to Switzerland. ATP Basel. Founded in 1970, has been at 500 since 2009. Last year, as I mentioned, Gio Petty beat Ben Shelton in the final to take down the crown. Felix, your countryman, FAA, he won back to back before that. In 2023, he beat Hubie Hurkacz in two tie breaks. He beat Holger Rune in 2022, which was the first time in 2 years, thanks to COVID. As you can imagine, Roger Federer has dominated this event with 10 titles here, and the speed should be playing pretty fast, John, correct?
Yeah, fast and slicker. I think it's a little slicker than Vienna as well. So this is probably a better one, draw talk wise, to maybe look for a decent numbered outright because these won't be up until later. I don't assume, but I think most people by the time they're listening to this and you're hearing me say these exact words, you'll probably have the outrights up because there's only one match left on Monday at the time of recording. And that's Menchik Bernay. And so by like 4 or 5 Eastern, I would imagine that'll be done. Certainly by 5, and then by 7 Eastern, around the time Monday Night Football starts, you should have the markets up. And so, like, I don't have numbers in front of me, but let's walk through the draw and take a look at where the value pockets might lie. Fritz is going to be your obvious favorite, and I don't know if I trust him right now. Like, he just has not been at his best for a couple of weeks. He's talking about burnout. He's talking about the physicality of the tour, even though the courts are quick, the balls are slowed down. And I think all the people asking for calendar change could really just ask for the balls to be changed to quicker ones again, and this would solve a lot of problems. Per Taylor Fritz, who I think even himself was implying calendar change is necessary in his Twitter interaction with Jack Draper, but then went on to talk about how the courts aren't that slow, it's the balls, and seemingly kind of addressing or giving a much easier fix than altering the entire tour calendar himself, which is hilarious. Don't know if he realized it or not, but I don't know where
You
he's
mean
at.
the guy that played Laver and the Six King Slam?
Yeah. Oh, but they don't try as hard. It's only a couple. Alcaraz did this, and the fans have tried to do this for ages. Well, you don't have to play as hard or like 2 full weeks like bigger events. First of all, the bigger events don't take up that much of the year. Second of all, you still have to travel. Third of all, the mandatory tournaments, you're playing these for money. That's fine. You could show up to smaller events and take appearance fees for cash, but you don't because these ones pay more, which is understandable. But once more, the mandatory events don't force you to play that much of the fall if you game plan properly in the first part of the year. Like you don't have to play these two 500 events if you fill out your allotment of 500s earlier in the season. I don't understand why people cannot stand this fall section of the calendar when players have all the choice in the world. They have to fill out, I think, 6 500s, and they have to fill out all but one of the mandatory, the non-mandatory. They can take one of the non-mandatory masters off, and that would be Monaco and Paris. Play Monte Carlo. You don't have to play Paris. You might not have to play this week. You don't have to play the 250. You don't have to you can. The 250 allotments are easy to take. I don't think there is an allotment for them, but you don't have to play this until the World Tour Finals. Like this is all an active choice from these guys. It drives me nuts how illogical every last bit of their arguments are. But even his own rationale about the balls provides an easier fix than realtering the whole tour, which of course financially y'all are going to take some pay hits then. Like that's just how it works. You're going to have less tournaments to make money. You're going to have less players that are able to be competitive, and it's just going to consolidate everything at the top. By the way, this is horrible for bettors too, because the less events you have and the less players you have on the main tour, the more that it consolidates at the top, the easier it is for people and the market to get a grasp of each player and to price them more efficiently. So keep that in mind as well. We want as many players as we can get to create a little bit of uncertainty in market, especially with some talented youngsters. But I digress. Yeah, we don't know where he's at. I have no idea, or I'm sorry, I have all the idea in the world of not to trust Casper Ruud, right? I mean, yes, he just won a tournament. So are you going to get some respect perhaps in the markets for that? Maybe, but these are completely different conditions. You won't find this time of year. I don't want to say this overall because there are some slower indoor events earlier in the season, but this time of year, you're not going to find too many tournaments that have opposite kind of conditions and court speeds as Basel and Stockholm. So I would completely not just write that off, but I'd actively look to oppose him in his section just because I think he might get some respect he doesn't deserve because of the change in conditions, and his game is particularly suited to Stockholm more so than Basel, right? So when you look at players, Alcaraz and Sinner might prefer one over the other, but the difference isn't that great because their game is fine on both surfaces. Casper's the opposite. He's more polar, right? He succeeds far more on slower courts than he does on quicker ones. So the quicker things get, the more it's going to impact him relative to others in the field. And that's why I think if he gets any respect at all for that Stockholm win in the markets for Basel, outright wise, you might be looking to oppose that. Menchik, I just don't trust, that. And that's a really tough little section. Fonseca, Menchik, Mpechi Pericard, and even Bernet could potentially cause some issues. But that second match is a coin flip, the way he returns. You go down to the bottom section, even Auger-Aliassime, who's got had a lot of success here, who loves racking up quick court titles late in the season when the big dogs aren't really here to play. He's got Gab Diallo in the first round. That's a tough matchup, an all-Canadian contest. And then Ben Shelton and Kamil Myshak at the bottom. I mean, how can you trust Ben Shelton? He's been back for one tournament. He said all the right things in press, that he was ready. He waited until he was really ready to come back, and then he got his ass kicked in his first match.
He did.
So
it was painful.
Where's he? So yeah, where is he? Like how much do you
that's
trust
a tough
him?
opening round draws with Myshak as well.
Yeah, and Myshak is a guy who likes the quicker courts. So do we even trust Ben Shelton's serve enough to maybe take first set overs? I don't know.
No, we don't. I don't at the moment. No, I feel like he's got a. I personally didn't feel like a month off was all that long for him to just go completely dust. But
Right.
I'll say this: it didn't seem like his physicality or his fitness was the issue. It just seemed like he was very lethargic, and quite frankly, he had lost the luster from his summer run. He needed some reps. So
Right.
we'll see how that goes. Bernay taking Men. I wonder what Menchik, if Menchik comes through, I wonder what he'll do this week, although he hasn't been great in some time, but another guy that could red line on serve and go pretty far here.
But look at his path. He's got one of the better young prospects in men's tennis who has really fared well in quicker conditions this year, or like he's played better because he's still very error prone. The forehand needs work, but I mean, he's tall, has a good first serve. He hasn't even filled out yet, so it's going to get even better. He's aggressive. The one hander is actually surprisingly okay. Uh, I don't know. We haven't seen it against real pace. This will be the first real test against real power we see it against. So I'm interested in that. But I don't think it's a walkover for Menchik. Certainly not as much as the markets believe, anyway. And then Apechi Pericard or Fonseca, I don't trust Menchik at all enough to break either of them more than maybe once or twice in a match. I think that's a coin flip. And then what? And then if Shapovalov or Rinderknecht or Giron in quick conditions, all three of those guys, again, more than capable, especially Shapovalov with that lefty game, of holding 85, 90, 95% of the time against him. And then potentially Auger-Aliassime, who is a very, very tough, I'd probably make him a favorite over Menchik in the semis. So you've got a really, really tough path for Jakub Menchik just to get to the final. Now, I think, honestly, I don't know how much, I don't think Taylor Fritz is there yet, but even if it's Lehechka in that final, that's a really tough quick quarter as well. We just saw him in fast conditions barely get broken last week.
Well, that's
That's
a
a
name I wanted to bring up, Yuri Lehashka, because we see these guys at the end of the year, especially on the indoor scene, they roll over their success and not an insurmountable path here. Although a lot of breakers potentially on the horizon with Opelka if he gets through, and then Fritz before he even reaches the semis, probably a couple breaker sets in that one as well. So a little coin flippy, but he might flip the right way. And as you mentioned, with Fritz and Shelton probably eating up a lot of the equity in terms of the outrights, Leheshka might be a nice price when they become live again.
Yeah, I think like if you're going to play a tournament where there's so likely to be so many close flippy sets, you've got to be looking at the Impechi Pericards or the Shapovalovs or the Lehechkas, Humbert. I think even Auger-Aliassime might be a little too juiced for my liking, considering how tough his path is right out of the gate. Rinderknecht, I don't bet, like, this is why I don't bet outrights. Because when I look at this draw, I just see so many incredibly close sets for almost everyone along the way. Other than Taylor Fritz, who's going to be way too juiced to trust, because he could even have to play Humbert and then Lehechka. He's not going to generate a ton of break opportunities in those matches. And if he's not generating a ton of break opportunities, we know that he's going to, it's going to be a lot of close sets. And if it's a lot of close sets, why the heck am I paying, a plus 200 or plus 300 price, plus 400 even, for a tournament favorite when he's going to have to go, win a very high percentage of very, very marginal sets? It just doesn't make sense to me. So that's why I'd lay off the outrights. I just look to back a lot of dogs in different capacities, right? You don't have to back the dog only on the money line. You can back the overs. You can back the plus sets. You can back the plus games. Lehechka's probably going to be a pretty big price against Fritz, although I just talked about the Casper Ruud being overvalued off a tournament win. He could be a little overvalued off of a nice run in Brussels. Ultimately, I think losing to Felix in 6-2 in the third, but and Fritz hasn't been great, so maybe you don't find that much value there. But I mean, there are going to be spots, Lehechka, Opelka. You might find some value on Opelka if Lehechka's overvalued. You know what I mean? You might find some value if Impechi Pericard continues to be a favorite because he has a huge serve and he won this last year. If you can find ways to oppose him with his a wide variety of opponents, probably not Jakub Menchik, but if he gets past that, a Shapovalov could be a really fun against that one-hander with that lefty game too. That could be a really fun fade spot as well. Maybe even Diallo against Auger-Aliassime off a title run. There's a lot of spots. Myshak against Shelton. There's a lot of really fun spots to look at that you can kind of forecast into the second round or even take in the first round, that you're going to be able to take some really strong positions maybe cash multiple bets at once and not have to worry about sweating an outright all week. I think this is a great tournament to just avoid the outrights and focus on the individual match play.
Well, let's get into that individual match play. John, is there a round one match that you are loving and want to talk about right out of the gates?
Well, as always, I think it's worth talking about Stan Wawrinka. I think that first set money line train has or edge has really dried up. I mean, when you get everyone tweeting and talking about it's kind of there's no better indicator that it's dried up. Like everyone knows it, and the prices are far like the price between first set money line and overall money line are much wider than the average player, which tells you all you need to know about the market again, drawing up that edge. So I still think he's got something in him. I mean, he had a decent run. I know it was at Challengers, and I know the last time we spoke about this, I said I trusted him to maybe bring that form to the main tour, and he didn't get waxed by Marichal, actually. He got a set, which was enough for me to profit. But he had to come back, I think, from a set and break down to do that. Or maybe not. I think he had to save break points. Either way, he was really on the break of losing like 6-1, 6-3, or 6-4 or something like that. So I felt lucky. But that was a kind of a profitable dog to back. And we get a similar situation in this one. Right? So you've got Miomir Kecmanovic, who probably better indoors or on quicker courts than Marichal, but the point is he's not a high level player. And Stan's serve and forehand combination, especially that +1 forehand, are still going. And even his backhand is pretty aggressive. They're still going to hold up and play strong and play well. I don't think he's sub 40% to beat Kecmanovic in this matchup. So I think Stan Wawrinka is well worth a look. We talk about him all the time as a guy who has like a very set player profile. The physicality hasn't always held up in recent years, but he's still got a huge game. And so you want to kind of take all the information you have about his game style and his age and his tendencies now and see how it applies to this surface. I don't see any reason. He's from the other side of Switzerland, obviously, I think, and he's not from the German. I think Stan Wawrinka, he's from Genève, so he's French, but still home country guy. Who knows how that helps him? I don't know. I don't really adjust for home country. I think it's a little overvalued in today's tennis betting world, but who knows? Nice as a tertiary thing to have in your back pocket if it does motivate him. Either way, Kecmanovic is not the guy you want to be backing against a strong server on quick courts as a large favorite. So for me, I'm going to take a little shot at Stan Wawrinka.
I like it, John. I want to talk about Sebastian Korda, who seemingly worms his way into a lot of our podcasts. He's taking on Ugo Humbert, the Frenchman. Korda is -123 on the money line. Ugo Humbert +109 as the dog on SXBet, where we like to play 23.5 total. John, we've talked in the past about how I think Korda's not as serve body as I would like him to be for someone of his size, and his first serve is a weapon. I'm not taking away from how big it is, and I do think it's effective. I feel like he is a little bit unreliable in a service game at times compared to the guys you paint with the bot brush, even though he is a scarecrow tall. But Ugo Humbert is not back. He might be back this week and upend Korda here because Korda is untrustworthy as it gets. But Humbert gets the retirement win against Runa. He was about to lose that match, number one, and then he was completely dusted by Casper Ruud, uncompetitive. I feel like at this point Korda should be tipping towards -150 in this matchup. If this was Ugo Humbert on a heater, I would maybe even make him a slight favorite. I just don't think we've seen that guy in some time.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'd hold too much of his form against him. He was pretty decent against in Shanghai. Losing to Rune in the third round is no terrible loss. Pretty good in Stockholm in conditions that aren't going to be as favorable to him as Basel will be. I think both Ruud and Runa, those are tough matchups when you slow things down and have a little bit of a higher bounce. Basel, this is kind of his wheelhouse. So I can't back or oppose him with an unreliable Corda on a fast track. I can't do it.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, Umber, his opening round win was against Berrettini, who we haven't seen back up a week in some time, and then he beats Sonego from a set down. Which, okay, kudos to him for finding it for 2 sets. But then, I mean, Runa was the dog against Umber because everyone was concerned about his fitness, and he loses the first set, face break points at the top of the second. I am suspect still of Ugo Umber.
Yeah, but every one of those guys, here's my problem. Every one of those guys is a quality player. Every one of those guys would prefer slower courts in a match against Ugo Humbert. And he still won two of them. And then the retirement, I'm not going to count by Runa because he was ahead when he tore his Achilles. The thing is, this like Humbert found some wins in less favorable conditions against guys that are just as good as Korda. I'm sorry, I was big on Korda when he first came back. I do not power rate him ahead of Sonego anymore. You can't make the case. It's just not possible. He's certainly not power rated anywhere near Ruud or Runa, so I don't really take those matches, especially in slower conditions, as any indicator or having any kind of relevance against someone like Korda. Not to mention, if you take a look at Ruud's shot quality in that final, it was off the charts. One of the best hardcourt matches he's ever played. So again, outlier result. You're now talking about Humbert coming to a place where the conditions are more favorable to his game against a guy who's not reliable and against a guy whose baseline power isn't really that strong. And I don't know if Korda loves the lower bounce. And Humbert hits really flat, or can, especially in attack, hit really flat, particularly on the backhand side. If that ball's staying low, is that going to bug Korda? Is that going to force errors out of Korda's game? I think the backhand is good enough to hold up against a big, powerful lefty game, so I'll give him that. But it's not enough for him it's not enough for me to make him a favorite. I can't. I don't know if I'm backing Humbert at plus 110 or plus 109, but I'm certainly not backing Korda as a favorite.
All right, well, you've maybe talked some sense into me, but I still like Korda here. Oh, why
I
am I
also don't know how
backing?
much we can trust.
Why am I backing Korda, John?
How much?
It's
How
just
much do
I
we
don't
trust
believe in Ugo
Humbert?
and Bear, man. I just don't. I don't. I like.
And,
Go ahead.
and how much do we trust him off a long week? That's another concern with Ugo is we haven't seen him play a long week in so long. He's had physical issues all year. The last long week he had was in Den Bosch, where he had a bye in the first round and made the semis, lost in Halle first round. I mean, I guess he played Chapeau, but still. Even Eastbourne made a run again, made a semifinal run, but he had a bye in that first round and then lost to Monfils, ran out of gas at Wimbledon the next week. There, in Marseille, where he won earlier this season, he then came out and beat a physically compromised Lehechka, then got beat by Greek Sport from a set up where he ran out of gas again. I'm concerned about his ability to back up long weeks. So it's for me, it's probably a pass at this point because Humbert has just not shown us the ability to play back-to-back weeks. When he's had to play a full week, especially this last 250, he did not have a bye. Or he did have a bye, but went to a final. 4 matches in a week has not led to a lot of success for him the subsequent week. So that might be a check in Korda's box. So I'm not sure. I have no idea what to do with this. I'm just going to pass.
Okay. I'm gonna put Korda on the win loss. I'm gonna play him. Not for 5 unit bomb, but 1 unit. Are we doing my Shack? Are we playing my Shack? Are we playing my Shack, John, against Shelton? Are we just blind fading Shelton until we see it?
I'm going to play the first set over. The first set overs, I think. He's down to plus 160, plus 170 in a lot of places too. I think at the plus 200s, it was probably smarter. But if you can get Ben, look, think about how much the market is adjusted or just doesn't understand my Shack's game, perhaps, to Ben Shelton looking looking just bad in his one tournament since the US Open. We're getting a plus 200 on the first set over 12.5, aka first set tiebreak market. On one of the faster indoor courts on tour with his serve and his return game, you're never going to see that. You just don't see many times he's going to be above plus 165, plus 170 against a half decent opponent. Now, whether or not the market doesn't understand Myshak's a half decent opponent, or whether they are just really scared of the Shelton physicality or potential kind of mechanics or whatever being impacted as it was in his last match, I'm not sure what is driving this price to being so cheap. But I'm going to go with the first set tiebreak before I go to the Myshak, or I'm going to go 10.5 as well at plus 140. But I'm going to do that before I go to the Myshak money line at plus 170. I think at plus 200, I probably have all those in like, smaller bets, either third or half unit bets. Just kind of sprinkle around and diversify with some nice plus money markets. But in this spot, I'm not huge on the money line anymore. So for me, it's the first set overs, small bets, nothing too crazy.
John, I'm considering João Fonseca at plus 121 now against Petchy Pericard, minus 129 on the money line for the favorite, 25 and a. Yeah, it's pretty much as high as it can go for the total. 25 and a half is juiced right now, actually. Here's the thing. For everything that we complain about, especially you complain about, rightfully so, astutely so, John, as a student of the game, is point starting not great. And while that could be a detriment in this matchup, the guy on the other side is maybe even a worse returner. So I feel like that's a little bit neutralized here, and probably breakers on the way. And I do think Fonseca has some talent and a nice matchup for him to maybe get a dog win with the market finally relenting a little bit in terms of his pricing for the Brazilian.
Well, that's because you have, what's it called? You have Petchy Pericard, who's another undeserved market darling in quick conditions, in terms of, helping balance that out. So I think if you're going to play anything, I'm not playing anything in this match. I wouldn't touch it with my worst enemy's bankroll. But I'm going to leave it alone. I think if you play anything, it has to be Fonseca. I just don't see how this is anything but like the coin flippiest of coin flip matches. And Betchy Pericard's probably less likely. Like he's less likely to throw away a service game, and his serve is just that much more solid. At the same time, Fonseca is just a better baseliner and far more athletic. So even they each have kind of one strength or a strength or two, the other doesn't. That or like I think the strength for the advantage for Petchy Pericard is reliability. That's probably the better way to put it. And Fonseca is just more athletic and probably has the better baseline game. But it doesn't really matter when neither guy's going to be producing a ton of great return points and working their way back to neutral footing. It just screams pass to me, or like it's a dog or pass spot. I mean, you take a look at some of these break props in the first set. No breaks in the first set is just an insanely expensive price. These are soft books anyway, so like if you're limited by, you have a pulse, you're limited at some of these places, so it's not like I could bet it if even if the price was great. But yeah, I mean the market's on this. These guys are just terrible returners. Both have really strong serves, though. You have to give them credit where it's due. So, yeah, it's a flippy match. Take the plus money or just pass.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna take the plus money and see if we can get Fonseca back on the board with a win this week, especially with Petchy Pericard. Not that he had the longest week ever, but he is kick-starting up another week, and maybe those legs get a little heavy at the wrong time, with a little more court time than his counterpart here. John, you mentioned you were going to be interested in fading Double V, Valentin, Vachereau. He's taking on Taylor Fritz. Right now on SXBet, not a lot of liquidity, but the 3.5 becoming playable. Minus 3.5, minus 120, minus 400 on the money line for Taylor Fritz. The Shanghai champion plus 340 as the dog, 22.5 total. I am getting interested if that 3.5 becomes playable here.
Nah, it's not going to leave it alone. I don't, as I said in the draw talk section, I just don't trust Fritz right now at all. Another guy coming from the Six Kings Slam, played into the weekend. Yeah, he hasn't been. I mean, even in Tokyo, Wasn't that convincing against Corda. Wasn't that convincing against Borges. Wasn't convincing against Diallo. Lost the final to Alcaraz. Wasn't convincing against Marichal. Lost in Shanghai to Mpechi Pericard. We're talking of his last 7 matches on the tour. He's had one halfway decent win or convincing win. That was against Jensen Brooksby. That's it. I just don't trust him to cover spreads against half decent servers in quick conditions right now. I do want to fade Vashko. I think I'll wait. I think the 22.5 at plus money seems like might actually be an over spot. I might be a small over spot along with the first set overs. But like I said, I just two guys I don't trust for different reasons. One, Taylor Fritz's form, and the other being Vashko's overvalue. What I would think would end up being overvaluations.
All right, John. Anything else for you? Opelka, Baez. I would think Opelka could be a play. It looks like the 2.5 is becoming. Yeah. Go ahead.
That's the last thing I wanted to get to. Was I was going to say if that 2.5 gets to be a kind of standard juice price, I would be on it. He's moved. Has there been money on Sebastian Baez, I believe, because that 3 was a more standard -110 at SXBet when I looked last night. I'm pretty sure. I think we can actually check the timeline on it, which is a fun part of this. But yeah, I can't seem to find the timeline here, but and it's only for a few hours. But I think if you can get that 2.5 into playable territory, it's certainly an Opelka bet. But for now, I think you can pass on that as well, even because he's just been really bad and just doesn't look like he cares all that much. So, and one thing we know about Baez is he might suck in these conditions, but at least he's going to care.
Last thing I'll do is just a quick comment on matches. Colleone, Rinderknech, probably a coin flippy type match. Colleone at plus 128. I'd want a little bit more with Colleone trying to back up a big week on the main tour against a veteran indoor player like Rinderknech. In my opinion, Halis, man, that would be a really fun set 1 bet, and maybe I'll end up there in the end. But the guy lost in the second round to Bertola, who is an okay indoor player, so I'm not taking away too much from that. But hard to say Halis has any form to be confident in a bet, even at these prices versus Casper Ruud, even off a champ week. And Diallo, FAA, probably a couple breakers. In fact, John, the over 23.5 is plus money. Maybe that actually is a play, John.
Diallo money line overs, that kind of stuff would all be I'm going to consider. Even though Felix, loves this tournament, that's not enough for me to just blindly stay away from backing a huge server at plus 200. And the secondary markets that are kind of correlated to these kinds of prices as well. Although the 2.5 games plus money, like it's basically a -2. It's not really all that intriguing. 23.5 is still elevated, although like you said, plus money means it's probably closer to a 23 than anything, which again could certainly be worth playing. But yeah, I might have a little Diallo, but that's about it. Halis. You mentioned Halis. I mean, I know he, like you said, he lost in qualities, but this is what I was talking about with Casper Ruud. This is a big shift in conditions that I think hurt him more than the average player. Halis has just been terrible this year. I don't understand. Just find your first serve, play smart, higher margin, +1 forehands. That doesn't mean taking power off. It just means not trying to paint lines with them. You don't need to. You've got so much power. It's going to skid through the courts and you're going to find a lot of cheap points anyway. A little confused as to why he's been so bad, but plus 419 does seem like a halfway decent number. So that'll be those will be the 2 looks that I'm considering throughout the rest of the day on Monday.
Yeah, the set 1 is plus 255. I'll probably end up being there. You know what? I'm going to do it. I like Halis indoors. Let's see if his serve can play up at these numbers. All right, we've said it all on Vienna and Basel for now. Don't forget, for $4.99 a month, you can get extra bonus episodes of this podcast, at least 2 per week. Follow us at All Surface Pod, including Steve's work. Steve's at Mr. at Ace _ previews himself. His Discord is still free, and he's been posting diligently despite getting married and on a holiday. What a stud. Follow him at ace underscore previews. Follow John at JR Tweets Tennis, at Tibbets Tennis. Please do give us a rating and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. Until next time, see you on the court.